Hey there, this is Phil. Welcome back to the show. It's the Phil Vischer Podcast. I am here with Christian Taylor.
Hey.
Hi, Christian.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
We're wearing like the same color.
I know. What happened to your black?
I got bored.
You did.
I got a little
After
bored.
5.5 years, you got bored.
And it wasn't black, it was charcoal gray.
It looks like you've gone crazy.
Sure, I know. Now I'm just like...
Dark blue.
I feel like Liberace here. I'm just crazy. And Sky Jitani.
Hi.
Who is still wearing the black.
I'm in black.
You're still wearing the black.
It's all right.
Last week, you were wearing a suit coat.
I was.
What? I missed that?
I know, you missed it.
I had a meeting after.
It was, not because of the show.
No.
Because he had to impress someone after the show.
Of course.
It had nothing to do with us.
No.
Which is nice. All right.
He has no pretense. He doesn't care.
We have a guest, but we'll introduce her in a minute. Hang on. I got to do the theme song.
You really don't.
Whoa.
How was that?
What
hey,
was
it's
that?
a podcast. What do you know? Oh, someone wanted me to do his paw grape. All right. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So in here, the Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. Oh, we'll talk to Sky.
Hi, Pa.
Hi, Sky. And Christian, too.
I've missed you. I'm glad you're back.
I know it's been a while. We got a guest here just for you. But we're going to introduce her later. Hey, it's a podcast still in here. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer Podcast starts right here.
Do you miss doing your character voices at all?
I do lots of character voices. I just have to keep coming up with new characters to do them for, because the old characters get sold into indentured servitude to some corporate giant somewhere, and then I can't do them anymore. But maybe they'll come back. You never know. So I'm doing Sam the Turtle, who is very similar to Pa Grape.
Yes.
I kind of brought that voice back and gave him to a turtle that I own from the grape that I no longer own.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and then we took Junior Asparagus back from the asparagus we don't own and gave him to an elephant.
I saw that.
A juvenile female elephant named Emily. Yeah, that's on Faithblocks. You can check out faithblocks.com. Faithblocks.com. Ding. Check it out. Okay, so it's Monday.
Yeah.
Today is Monday.
Yeah, I woke up.
October 2nd.
Christian, how's your Monday going?
Sky Jitani, bite your tongue.
Sorry.
This is such an inside joke. I cannot believe you did that.
What?
We had a gathering on Friday night of friends that got a little out of control, and too much truth was told about things that happened on Monday in our family.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
We really shouldn't go any further.
No, okay. I'll just let that go. Crazy stuff is going on. So we're not even done with Houston.
No.
Houston is still wet in parts.
Okay.
But who's thinking about Houston? Because
so much water under the bridge.
Exactly.
Literally.
Since then, we've lost the Florida Keys. But then we've forgotten about that. Because since then, we lost Puerto Rico.
And the Virgin Islands.
And the Virgin Islands. And Barbuda. We lost islands I didn't even know existed.
But
I didn't
Barbuda is
have
not
time
ours.
to miss them.
But you know what? We really should forget about all of that, because what's most important is what's happening in the NFL.
And then we've got what's happening in the NFL. But now I wake up this morning to Las Vegas.
That was horrible.
man.
Made me sick when I saw that.
Yeah. So
It's not a great way.
like, what the heck is going on?
Feels like the end of times.
It's something crazy. And the Las Vegas, so it's Monday afternoon as we're recording this. So the shooting in Las Vegas happened Sunday night. It happened last night. So we don't have any real info about motives, except that from all appearances, and this is what's so odd, this doesn't seem to reinforce anyone's narrative.
In what way?
What do you mean?
Well, because the first thing you look for after a shooting is, all right, is that a Muslim name?
Right.
Can we then say that's what it was?
Was it Islamic terrorism?
Yeah, okay, no, it wasn't that. Okay, well, it was a white guy? Oh, he must have been a racist. Was he shooting at a Black Lives Matter march? No, it was a country music festival. Okay, so he's not a Islamic terrorist, he's not a racist, he's not... What?
Well, then you think mental illness.
Yeah.
But apparently there's not any history.
He's 64 and there's no criminal record. So what the heck happened?
Who knows? I mean, hopefully there'll be some explanation.
It makes it a lot more complicated by the fact that he's no longer living.
Right. It's like anyone who would say, "Oh, this fits my narrative and reinforces my stereotypes." It's like, even if you're like, "Oh, so now we'll finally get gun control." Well, no. Apparently, he was using automatic weapons that are already controlled. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't even fit that narrative. Like when do you? Because I can kind of get if you just if your life has gone south so bad. But that didn't seem to be the case either. But if you're like that, you just want to go out and you just want to take a few people with you.
Well, a few is horrible.
Yeah, but this
insane.
is like, how many people can I take with me? I'm going to come up with I think my biggest concern about the news is that it could that's a new way to do it. Oh,
well, it gives people ideas.
Yeah, people take note of, wow.
But, this reinforces my thinking, which is we desperately, as human beings, want to believe that we can control all these bad things that happen to us.
Yeah.
And control is an illusion. And no matter what gun control we have or, what we do to put safeguards in place, bad things are going to happen. Man has been, inhumane to man for all of time, and that's going to continue.
Yeah, but I really hate that argument.
Tell me why.
Because I think it's an excuse for not doing what we can do.
Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything.
There's some folks on Twitter who've been on my case today because they're making that essential argument. You can't regulate evil, and you can't legislate laws that are going to change people's hearts and all this kind of stuff. I'm like,
but you can regulate explosives.
Right. I'm going, this isn't the fact that people are already saying, "Oh, well, there's nothing we can do about this. It's going to happen." I'm like, this does not happen in other countries.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This does not happen.
I totally agree with you.
Except the Netherlands.
And I do think that
it was Norway.
Yeah, but not with this regularity.
No.
I do think that we ought to work to change those things, but at the same time, I don't think that we should be paralyzed with fear, and I don't think that we should expect the government to make everything so safe for us. Nothing ever happens.
But the irony is the one sort of undebated purpose of government is to protect its citizens.
True.
That's the one thing the government is supposed to do. And, the irony is in the aftermath of tragedies like this, there's two things you can count on. One, a whole bunch of conservatives are going to say, now is not the time to talk about gun control, right? Now is the time to unite as a country and grieve. That's number one. Number two, you can guarantee there's going to be a massive spike in gun sales. Every time there's a tragedy like this, gun sales go through the roof because people become more afraid and they think, I need to be armed. And this one, as horrible as it was, the news reports I've seen, the first responders did a phenomenal job at responding quickly, trying to get people out of the way, locating where the shooter was coming from, all that. I mean, the first responders did an amazing job. Those first responders are the so-called good guys with guns. And even at their best, they weren't able to prevent something like this.
And you also can't argue, because the other argument you'd hear if something like this is, well, if more of the people there were allowed to have guns, then they could have taken the guy out.
Right. But no, not a sniper like that.
Nope. He was 500 yards away and 300 feet up in the air.
Was he sniping? I didn't understand that.
Well, he had an automatic
He was shooting a machine gun out of the 32nd story window.
Right. So far away, a lot of people don't even know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a little concerning because there's currently a bill in Congress to make it easier for citizens to buy silencers. The only reason they found him in the time they did is because he didn't have a silencer.
Right, because they could hear where it was coming from.
You could hear where the shots were coming from. So they could tell it was the Mandalay Bay Hotel. And they went through the hotel and found the room because of the noise. Oh, I don't think.
So I don't understand these certain voices that are against any regulation, like limiting magazine capacity or banning silencers or certain guns or background checks or going down the list that have all been proven to help. And I was listening to the press conference today at the White House, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked the question, and they pull out this line all the time, which is Chicago has the most gun laws of any city in the country, and yet we have the worst gun violence.
She pulled that out today.
She pulled it out today, and I'm thinking, we live in Chicago, we see the violence here all the time, but what never gets reported is that the vast majority of guns in Chicago are coming from the South. They're coming from
or
other states.
just across the border in Indiana.
Right, or states that have very limited or no gun regulations.
Yeah.
Because of interstate commerce, that's possible. We don't have a national policy. So you can't isolate Chicago and say they have tons of gun laws and it's still happening when anybody can carry a gun into Chicago. There's no trunks being checked when you enter Illinois. So it's just these false
Not
arguments.
even your trunk?
No.
They don't even check your
Only
trunk?
when I go to Disney World.
Only when you go to Disney World. Yeah.
Or sometimes on airplanes, or go through airport security.
Do you ever get pulled aside to be patted in airports?
Well, I have pre-check, and I only travel with my American passport, even in the U.S.
I thought one time.
I get checked all the time, but now that I use a U.S. passport and I'm pre-check, I don't get pulled aside as much.
Okay. I'm glad for that.
Thank you.
That's good.
It's nice to have a terrorist on our podcast.
So do we have any advice for our
Well, it is incredibly
listening?
sad, and when there's 400 million guns in this country, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, right.
So
it's hard to make things go away when they're there. Okay. We'll talk about this more as we learn more, but we just don't know very much right now. In related news, last week, Hugh Hefner died. Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think he died a couple decades ago.
Correct me if
At least his soul.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sky. Most of your life, you've modeled yourself after Hugh Hefner.
I've tried.
That was.
We do have one thing in common.
What's that?
I do like a bathrobe. I would spend all day in a bathrobe if I could.
Why have I never seen you in a bathrobe?
I've never seen that bathrobe either.
Because you haven't been in my house before 8 a.m.
Okay.
And he doesn't usually laze around. That's not
Sky
Sky's
does
MO.
enjoy a good bathrobe.
I do.
This was interesting. Ross Douthat. Douthat? Douthat?
Do that.
Do that.
It could be do that.
Ross Do That.
Which is his Playboy pen name.
Wrote a piece in the New York Times, an opinion piece entitled "Speaking Ill of Hugh Hefner," where he actually just kind of took him on.
He unloads
and said, "This guy isn't really worth anything."
Yeah. It's a really good piece, actually.
Well, it's a fantastically written piece, and what I found so refreshing about it is that not only did he take, or talk about Hefner as he really saw him, but he talked about the culture that, either he made or responded to him, and he took on both sides, and I thought that was very balanced.
Yeah, he had very little, nothing good to say about it. And it's interesting because he's being honored now. He's kind of, Hugh Hefner, he's an icon of, what is he an icon? He's an icon of the liberalization of America.
The sexual revolution.
He's a sexual revolutionary icon. Which makes just a lot of people feel uncomfortable with that. Was that the sexual revolution? Was that really it? Was it Playboy magazine?
It's a symbol of it, but he was a pornographer.
Yeah. Ross says, no doubt what Hefner offered America, somebody else would have offered in his place, and the changes he helped hasten would have come rushing in without him. But in every way that mattered, he made those changes worse, our culture coarser and crueler and more sterile than liberalism or feminism or freedom of speech required. And in every way that mattered, his life story proved that we were wrong to listen to him. Because at the end of the long slide lay only a degraded priapic, I don't know what that word means, senility, or the desperate gaiety of Prince Prospero's court with the Red Death at the door. Then he closes up by saying this. Now that death has taken him, we should examine our own sins. Liberals should ask why their crusade for freedom and equality found itself with such a captain, and what his legacy says about their cause. Conservatives should ask how their crusade for faith and family and community ended up so Hefnerian itself, with a conservative news network that seems to have been run on Playboy Mansion principles and a conservative party that just elected a Playboy as our president. You can find these questions being asked, but they are counterpoints and minor themes. That this should be the case, that only prudish Christians and spoil-sport feminists are willing to say that the man was obviously wicked and destructive, is a reminder that the rot Hugh Hefner spread goes very, very deep. Ouch.
Priapic.
Priapic, yeah.
Having to do with phallus.
Oh.
Exaggeratedly concerned with masculinity and male sexuality.
Priapic senility. I think that's appropriate.
Great appropriate use of that word.
It's usually better to use words that your readers have heard before, but maybe we're just not smart enough for the New York Times.
It's just so illogical as I think about it that he is, lauded like he is by, so many for this, sexual freedom or whatever, when truthfully, at bottom, he so disrespects women in who they are as people and that...
Well, what did he consider women? Playmates.
Yeah.
But does that make them an equal?
No.
I heard that recent interview. It was re-aired on Fresh Air.
Yeah.
From a couple years ago, and
Terry Gross.
Yeah, Terry Gross asked him about, because he kept holding himself up as Playboy was this part of the sexual revolution.
Yes.
It was rebelling against the puritanical roles for women and da-da-da-da. So he's kind of put himself as like this feminist advocate.
I should be a feminist icon.
Yeah,
Me and Gloria Steinem.
So she asked him, like, well, what about all the criticism that eventually came your way from feminists and others?
Yeah.
And his attitude was, well, it was pretty unwarranted because what we were celebrating is women being free with their sexuality and unrestrained. And
he claimed, as I listened to that interview too, he claimed to be rebelling against the mood of the 50s, which was that World War II had brought women out of their homes and into the workforce by necessity. The 1950s, the social pressure was that they needed to go back to return to their families. It's like, crisis is over, all of you women, go back home, and cook and clean again, back to domesticity. And his point was, well, that's going backwards. That was going back towards our puritanical history. His parents were strict Methodists, and he hated it.
Right.
His whole thing is that he's rebelling against his parents.
But he didn't create a magazine to show women in the workforce.
Oh, it was the workforce for some of them.
There was this one girl who was in an office.
You've heard.
And he didn't create a magazine showing women getting out of their homes. He's showing women getting out of their clothes.
Yeah.
Which is that's the oldest form of female exploitation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the irony that, it's just weird.
It's just, but people were so reluctant to say bad things about him because you would be siding with, the Jerry Falwells of the world.
Well,
you don't want to be on that side, right?
Pornography makes interesting bedfellows.
It does. Gloria Steinem and Jerry Falwell.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that work? Liz, do you have anything to say about this? You don't have. No, you're not going to touch that. Okay. So is there anything that can be, what's interesting is how Playboy has become so kind of old-fashioned, because the internet has completely taken over the pornographer's role and has just pushed it to, extremes that even, junior high boys now would look at Playboy and say, well, that's kind of dull.
I bet junior high boys have no idea what Playboy is.
That's probably true.
Well, if you find one. Like when I was in grade school, somebody found a Playboy in the woods behind the school. And that freaked out the whole school. It's like, what is this? It was like it came from another planet. It was like a meteorite.
Because such things don't happen in Iowa?
No, because we'd never seen anything like that before, us kids. Oh. Like, wah! But forget about it today.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah, no, it's a totally different world.
Well, you can see almost more than that or the same in, PG-13 movies that kids go to.
Well, no, you can't have nudity in a PG-13.
No, I'm exauding.
Yes,
but
you are.
Can and are. And a lot of kids these days under 18 are watching R-rated
but they don't even. Nudity is no longer a selling point in the movie.
You can see almost as much in
matter.
Playboy in Victoria's Secret commercials.
No, you can't.
Well, you could probably see as much in some of the video games that are popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe.
I had to outlaw Leisure Suit Larry.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter because you can just push a button on your phone. And what you used to have to go to Times Square for in the 1970s is now on everyone's phone and everyone's pocket in America.
I tell you what bothers me. What bothers me, and I agree with him, is that, we have evangelical Christians, the Jerry Falwells of the world and others who are so staunchly against, what Hugh Hefner stands for and, speak so strongly against that. And yet, who they support does not line up with what they're saying.
Are you talking about Mr. Trump?
Well, Trump was on the cover of Playboy.
Yeah, he was. But he would have been on the cover of anything if someone would let him.
That's true.
He was on the cover of Time when he wasn't even on the cover of Time. He made up his own Time cover
that's right.
to be on the cover of Time.
I just am saying, I think we as conservatives and conservative evangelicals oftentimes prostitute ourselves for our purposes.
Ouch.
Our greater purposes. I just made that up. That was pretty good.
Ouch, you're hurting my heart.
Yeah, but don't use the pronoun we.
We
Say
are
you,
all conservative
you,
evangelicals.
Sky.
I don't know. I don't think that.
know?
I don't think that term applies anymore.
Okay, we have a guest.
We do.
Hallelujah.
Did you know that? We have a guest. Our guest's name is Liz. Is it short for Elizabeth?
It is not.
It's not.
Just Liz.
Just Liz?
Just Liz.
I also have a Chinese name, which is my official first name.
Oh, let's hear that.
Yiqing.
Yiting.
Yiqing. Yeah.
Yiting.
How do you
Q
spell
in
it?
Chinese, it's Yiqing. No U.
Yiqing.
Yeah,
Yiqing.
good.
Oh,
Q
I
is
like
like
that.
a T, between a T and a CH sound in Chinese.
Okay.
Huh.
That's fantastic.
I'm not going to try.
That's fantastic. Liz Dong works at World Relief. She is the Midwest Regional Mobilizer. Is that your title?
That is my title.
That's really cool. You're here to mobilize the Midwest.
Yeah, theoretically.
Okay. If there's like an alien invasion or anything, I'm coming to you. Because you've got...
Covering the Midwest.
Yes, you've got
Only
the Midwest covered. The Midwest Regional Mobilizer for the Evangelical Immigration Table, which works to help churches respond to immigration from a biblical perspective. She is herself an immigrant. You were born in China?
I was.
Where?
Nanjing,
Okay.
which is 200 kilometers northwest of Shanghai.
Okay.
It used to serve as the capital of China.
Okay.
I do know where Shanghai is.
Transition
That's
of
fantastic.
dynastic China to modern
What
China.
did they do with
Right.
Peking? Where did Peking go?
That's Beijing.
Definitely, yeah.
Because of
I was gonna
the
say, it's
duck.
definitely still in China.
They had such wonderful duck, and then it was
still do.
gone. They still
They
do?
still do.
Okay.
Delicious.
But it's still Peking duck.
This
Right.
is all he knows
But
about
Beijing
China.
is-
Yeah, so he's going to
So
pull
you're just
out
gonna have
every.
to you're just gonna have to forgive him. It's all he knows about
Okay,
China.
Liz, you've got
Yes.
a pretty amazing story.
By the grace of God.
Yeah.
Well, so I was born in China, and I came to the States at age 10. So my mom had actually come here first to study and then do her master's degree.
Okay.
So she was at first on student visa, and then by the time she was able to land a job in the Chicagoland area, transfer from her student visa to her work visa, that's when then I could come.
Okay, so how
legally
long was
as
she here
independent.
ahead of you?
5 years.
Whoa. Okay, and were you with your dad?
I was with my grandparents.
Your grandparents?
Yes,
Okay.
which is not atypical of a lot
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
families
Yeah.
when their
Okay.
parents needed to study here and my mom couldn't work on her student visa,
Right.
so she also couldn't financially support having me here.
Gotcha. So you came over when you were 10, and she was then working. What did she do?
Yeah, she works in business, supply chain management.
Okay. Okay. So you were 10 to the Chicago area?
The Chicago area straight.
And your first thought was?
First thought was snow. Oh my goodness, I have never seen snow before. Nanjing is one of the hottest cities in China, very humid.
Okay.
And then the year that I came, 1999, towards the end of 1998, beginning of 1999, I think Chicago had seen its worst snowstorm in the last 20 years or so.
I remember
So,
that.
like, piles of
remember
snow.
it too.
School
Yeah.
was closed.
Yeah. And
it was-
were you excited about that? Or?
Yeah. I had
Did you
to-
arrive in the winter?
I did arrive in the winter.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's a tough
from
entry.
one of the hottest places
Yeah.
in China, where it's, commonly 40 degrees Celsius. Well, in China we do Celsius and like 100% humidity. To Chicago snow.
Fantastic. And you were 10 years old, so you were in what grade?
4th grade.
4th grade. And you jumped right in. Did you have English?
I did not know any English.
Okay.
Actually, the school that I came from in China started English second semester of 4th grade, and I left right after
Yeah.
first
You
semester.
went for the immersion technique.
Oh, I did.
Right, yeah.
And it worked.
Clearly.
So I
Wow.
came.
I have a story just like that.
Yeah.
I lived in Iowa, where you could get a moped license at 14. And then 2 months before I turned 14, when we had a moped, we moved to Illinois. And you can't get a moped license in Illinois.
That's sacrifice.
Isn't it?
I'm
That's
sorry.
pretty
That is
similar.
very
I feel
similar.
like we have a bond.
You get me.
Yes.
You get me.
Okay. So you're here. You
Yes.
learn English because that's easy.
Right. Although I think it was definitely easier as a kid,
Okay.
but there was no really structured ESL program back in my school at the time, and very few international students. Period. So it was really the full immersion. I just was plugged right into school.
Wow.
I did okay in math because they used numbers.
Yeah.
And we used the same numbers.
The language of the cosmos.
Yes, that's right. But yeah, it took me a little bit to learn, but eventually
Okay.
I would pick up and make friends,
Okay.
which was good.
And then you did well. You
I
did well in high school.
I did.
You were.
I worked hard. I did
Yeah.
pretty well in high school.
Now, were you a full American citizen when you showed up at age 10? How does that work?
No, I was
Enlighten
not.
me.
Surprisingly. So, as mentioned, I came on dependent visa, or H4, and I was not given a Social Security at the time, even though I came here legally. And then, so I was given, however, individual tax identification number, in short, ITIN, for whenever I was ready to pay taxes.
Okay.
But I think at the time, my status was just wholly dependent on my mom's.
Yeah.
And I think when I became of age, then I had the choice of switching my status and applying for, permanent residency and citizenship and so on.
Okay. So you went through high school. You
I did.
Did well. Did you go to college
Right.
before bad things happened, or
So
after
I guess
bad
an
things
important part
happened?
of my story
Yeah.
that I haven't brought up is shortly after I came, so about 2 years after I came, my mom had changed jobs that year, in 2001. And with a work visa, it's employer sponsored. So whenever you change your jobs, you have to apply for a new employer-sponsored visa. And with the switch her status, I was supposed to be just kind of, be tagged along. But our immigration attorney completely forgot to attach my paperwork to hers.
Minor oversight.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. And then September 11th happened. And which delayed our processing, which of course didn't expect, didn't see it coming. So ended up also putting my family in a position, well, for me, because he just completely forgot about my paperwork, I just slipped right through the crack and lost my status. And because, this was unintentional and he didn't really catch it right away, it wasn't until the following year my mom was checking in on my paperwork and all of that when we realized I had lost my
didn't
status.
have
And I had
any.
already incurred a certain number of days of unlawful presence here in the United States.
So you're a criminal, is what you're trying to say.
Well, actually, immigration to come or to have unlawful presence in the U.S. is a civil infraction, not a criminal offense.
Okay.
Oh.
So technically speaking,
I'm
I am
poking
not.
fun at the those bumper stickers. What about illegal? Do you not understand?
Yes.
That people
Yes.
like to soundbite around
So
this
you
issue.
are-
and I think it's also important to clarify then the same way that as someone who might have crossed the border illegally
Yes.
would be considered, I've incurred a civil infraction.
It's a civil infraction, not a criminal infraction.
Correct.
Right.
Under the current law.
Okay. So what's the word for a civil infractor? You're a civil infractor.
So can I just ask you a more substantive question?
I liked my question.
So at that age, I'm assuming you're like 12 or 13
Correct.
at that
I was
time.
12 at the time.
Did you understand the import of what had happened?
Right. So my mom actually didn't tell me right away. She wanted to spare me the weight of knowing as a 12-year-old. Not that I would have understood the fine print of U.S. immigration law. So I actually didn't come to find out until I was closer to entering high school. Actually, before I was getting ready to drive. That's when I realized that I did not have legal status. And without, I didn't have a Social Security. Without legal status, I couldn't drive. I couldn't work. And at the time, entering to high school, I could not go to I could not go to college, regardless of how I did in high school.
Well, when your lawyer found out that he didn't attach your paperwork, how come he can't just say, hey, I made a mistake, I'm going to turn this paperwork in late, or I'm going to redo this paperwork? Doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal.
It is a big deal that the U.S. government would consider. So it's not something that if you pass a deadline, you can just say, sorry, I made a mistake. And even at the time when September 11th happened, the Immigration Office, USCIS, United States Customs Immigration services actually stopped processing
Right.
paperwork for a while because, understandably, they're wanting to make sure who they were allowing into the country.
Right.
So that also jeopardized a lot of cases. But they're not going to turn around and say, "Sorry, we apologize for the delay and let's make it up."
So-
it's just
So more recently, this has officially put you in the camp of being a dreamer.
correct. I am a dreamer.
You are under
Correct.
under DACA.
I received DACA when it was administered in 2012. I applied right away and was able to.
Can you
grant
explain
it.
that? Because I don't know. I mean, I think there's one little nuance we need to flesh out here, and that is, before DACA, you could have been kicked out, right?
Yes, I was eligible for deportation, although I was considered low priority because
Okay.
I didn't pose,
Yeah.
a threat.
And
to
so-
national
Just
security.
look at you. You're just.
Although some people
you're
might argue that I
darling.
look scary, but
And so then, how did that change? Can you explain how that changed?
Yeah. What did DACA do?
Yeah.
Sure.
And what is DACA? Why don't you tell us that?
Yeah. So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It was implemented in 2012 under the Obama administration. It allowed children who were brought into the United States under the age 16 at the time of entry, who can prove continuous presence in the United States, who have no criminal background, that can pass security screening, to apply for temporary work authorization. That was good for 2 years, and then possibly renewable. And then as well as protected presence from deportation.
Okay, so it prevents you from being deported, and it gives you the ability to legally work
Correct.
and pay taxes.
Can
And
you
pay
drive
taxes.
Right.
and go to school?
Yeah, so with it, I was able to actually apply for a social security number for the first time and then apply for my driver's license. But it does not give status.
Right. It doesn't
basically
make
for-
you a citizen.
It does not.
It doesn't give you permanent residency.
Neither does it put me on a path to eventually.
Right.
It's just
just-
temporary limbo, kind of this limbo but protected presence.
But do you
Right.
pay taxes?
I absolutely pay taxes.
So what's interesting is basically you are an American citizen for all intents and purposes, other than on a piece of paper, and we're even taking money from you.
I am contributing to the social security system and the welfare system as well. Yes, without DACA recipients are not eligible for social security or welfare.
So you have to
benefits.
pay in,
Right.
but
Correct.
you're not allowed to
Right.
receive it.
Correct.
So,
Wow.
how long have you been at World Relief?
I've been at World Relief since 2014, so
Okay.
3.5 years.
Okay. And what do you do there exactly?
Right. So as my title very clearly
Yes.
says, I work with churches. I also work a little bit with business and law enforcement constituents, doing kind of grassroots mobilization and helping people to, well, first of all, understand the issue, facts and realities around immigration. Are immigrants stealing jobs from Americans? Are refugees really terrorists? But especially as I work, and my heart is really in this, and working with churches, is helping churches understand immigration from a biblical perspective. What does Scripture tell us
Yeah.
about this topic? What is God's heart for immigrants?
And you have to cover the whole Midwest with this message.
You have to mobilize
Church-
us to believe it
Church
and then act
by
on.
church by church. Do you travel a lot?
I travel a lot. Yes, where I work. And believe it or not, Pennsylvania got roped into the Midwest.
Oh,
as
really?
well.
Really?
So,
Fantastic.
How about that?
All
yeah,
the way
I enjoy it.
So,
Although Eastern Pennsylvania probably don't consider themselves, or even
Midwesterners,
Western
no.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
explain for our listeners who may not be aware what has happened to the DACA program recently,
Right.
and how did you react to those changes?
Right. So DACA was rescinded under the Trump administration on September 5th of this year.
So about a month ago.
Right. Now, it was a huge disappointment, but I cannot say that it came as a huge surprise because Trump ran on the campaign that he was going to undo DACA, or as well as all of President Obama's executive orders. I was actually in South Africa at the time. I actually just recently came back from study abroad in South Africa. Under DACA, there's the opportunity of applying for what's called advanced parole. That allows you to travel on very limited basis, so for work, educational, or humanitarian basis. So I was able to take advantage of that and be able to study abroad in South Africa. But so I was actually overseas when I heard the news.
So when does your status expire?
So the cancellation of DACA, Trump has allowed it to be a phase out instead of immediate cancellation. So my permit, my DACA permit, work authorization, naturally expires September of next year, 2018.
So you have 1 year.
I have 1 year.
And if nothing changes, next September, the government could have complete authorization to just kick you out of the country.
Correct. They would have that.
Right.
So, what about, is that just because you're older? Does this apply to people, to dreamers that are younger than 18?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, dreamers, so as long as you entered under the age of 16 and you was undocumented in 2012 when it was first issued, DACA, and I think you have continuous presence in the United States, I believe it was 4 or for 5 years, then you could apply for DACA. So yeah, there could have been people who have, as long as they've been here for 5 years, wide range of age.
So there could be families and households similar to yours when you were younger, where the parents or your mother may have legal status, but a child doesn't, and that child legally could be thrown out of the country without their mother or father.
That is a possibility. Correct.
I mean, that's how crazy the system is.
Yes, we find a lot of mixed status families.
Right.
In the
So
United
why
States.
are we so afraid of dreamers?
Frankly, I don't know.
Isn't that a Muppet song?
I don't know. Dreamers have contributed to the economy as students, as consumers, as workers. There are economic estimates that if dreamers, so there are about approximately 800,000 DACA recipients. If they were to be pulled from the economy, deported, that would be that would hit the U.S. economy $400 billion in GDP loss over the next decade.
Wow.
We have paid, since the implementation of DACA, that allowed many of us to work and lead productive lives. We've contributed about $2 billion to the Social Security.
Well, truthfully, not all joking aside, what is the argument? What is the political argument that
here's
conservatives
one.
make?
We need to be a nation of laws. Huh?
But you can't regulate
That's
evil.
a pretty good argument.
Why do we need laws?
We need. Are you against?
And we believe that, at
you-
Royal Leaf,
are
at
you-
EIT, and me personally, really, I do believe that we should uphold the rule of law.
Now, the reason we invited Liz to be on the show isn't simply because we bumped into her holding a placard on the side of the road saying, "Help me."
Dreamer looking for podcast.
She wrote a piece for Time magazine entitled, "I'm an undocumented immigrant and an evangelical Christian," which I guess that's kind of attention grabbing because people don't see it that way. Evangelical Christians want undocumented immigrants to leave the country. Why?
I think, and going back to your point about the rule of law, I agree, but we're also facing an immigration system that has not been majorly reformed since the 1960s.
Yeah. We've tried, kind of.
Kind of, although I don't know if we tried hard enough.
Yeah.
But that has put families at risk of being separated through deportation, and really, I think, held the U.S. economy back because the ways that immigrants contribute to the economy. 40% of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. But so we're looking at a system that has not kept up to date.
Yeah.
So we are for upholding the rule of law through updating and making this law, one, enforceable, not selectively, arbitrarily enforced, but also that serves the interest of the citizens of this country, as well as the immigrants in this land. But
What's the Evangelical Immigration Table?
The Evangelical Immigration Table, or EIT in short, is a coalition of several national Christian organizations that have come together to address immigration. Understanding that the system is broken. World Relief, World Vision, the National Association of Evangelicals, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Okay, and you sit on that committee? You're on the committee?
I'm part of the EIT, so I'm a field staff mobilizer with the Evangelical Immigration Table.
Okay.
There's that word again.
Back up. Because in my study of this issue and my conversations with leaders on this issue, the organizations that you just mentioned, like evangelical leaders seem to have a pretty good handle on their thinking on this issue. And they're fairly unified, and there's a need for comprehensive reform of the law. a compassionate response to the people who are already here, keeping families together, all that kind of stuff. However, when you poll the people in the pew, like the average, particularly white evangelical America, they completely disagree. They have a different view than the leaders of their own denominations, churches, organizations. How do you explain the gap?
Yeah.
I have an answer. Denominational leaders do not have television shows. That's my explanation.
Yeah, okay. All right, but I'd like to hear Liz's.
Yes,
no,
me
I think
too.
I've covered it. Okay, Liz.
Yeah, I think, and sadly, the immigration discussion has really been deduced to many times media headlines or campaign talking points that people aren't really talking about this in a very nuanced, constructive manner. So, once they hear, and there are a lot of, again, unfortunately, a lot of myths and misunderstandings about immigrants and refugees that have been perpetrated. So I think if people consume just certain media outlets that may not be providing the most accurate information, and they may not know immigrants or refugees, or think they know. Oftentimes, the immigrants, refugees in their lives may not look the way that they might think that they should look, because again, I think just we come from very diverse socioeconomic, ethnic backgrounds. That this just becomes us versus them issue. And so part of my work, part of the work at World Relief and EIT, is really helping to bring that constructive, nonpartisan discussion to the table. We don't endorse political candidates, political parties, but we're focused specifically on this issue of immigration.
I wonder if there's an elephant. I wonder if there's an element.
There is an
of,
elephant in that.
of telephone here, where truthfully, if you don't know a dreamer, or really immigrants and don't have any sort of personal relationship with them, all you know is what you hear or what someone else has told you, and so you just adopt these thoughts that aren't really based in much. Yeah. And I think when you meet someone and you hear their story, all of a sudden your thoughts begin changing. And one of the things I love about a video that you've done, and I think it would be great if we could share that link, interns who have no name, is,
sure, we'll share the link. It's on YouTube.
At the end, you say you may not think a dreamer, and you may not, but now you do. And I love that video because it does really introduce you and your situation, which I'm guessing is not, uncommon. It's probably a common situation. Yeah.
What?
Right. I actually just ran across the stats recently that in the Chicago metro area, Chicago, Naperville, Elgin area, I think there are about 34,000 dreamers.
Wow.
Yes, but we don't really hear
dreamers
their
all
stories.
around us.
Yeah, which is so important to
That's
listen.
That's just in our
a lot
area.
Of dreamers.
And that's just in our area.
And we got to remember, though, most of them are drug dealers, murderers, and rapists, and a few may be good people.
Oh,
right?
So
Something like that.
You're being a little
Something like totally off,
antagonistic.
but
Yes,
okay.
I'm being facetious, obviously.
Okay, Liz.
No, yeah.
Okay, Liz. Someone asked Franklin Graham, this immigration stuff, American policy on immigration, how can you not be in favor of it? Isn't this a biblical issue? He said, no, it's not a biblical issue. America's immigration policy is not a biblical issue. Agree or disagree?
Well, I just have to say, for me, and the reason that I'm so passionate about this issue and doing this work is that I very much see myself as the product of the church welcoming the stranger, living out the biblical command.
So were you a Christian when you?
I was not a Christian. I come from non-believing family background, and really by God's grace, He first brought Christians into my mom's life when she studied in Iowa. She was in Iowa before.
Oh, those Christian Iowans
Iowa,
saving the world.
Did her intensive language studies and master's, but when she moved to Chicago, they made sure to connect her to their Christian family members and friends, and we remain good friends till this day. But anyway, so even when, at first when my mom immigrated as an immigrant, they loved on her. And even when later on that I would lose my immigration status, they continued to love on us and welcome us.
They even helped you speak out. Apparently, your youth group leader, I think.
Yes, my youth pastor was actively involved in learning about this issue after he found out my story, and learning about it and engaging legislators on this issue. So both within the church and out in the public sphere.
Which sounds like what the church should be doing.
Oh, this is people get all upset with me because I say the church needs to be more political, this is a perfect example of what I
Yes,
mean. It's
there's a huge difference between political and being partisan.
Exactly.
You guys are in cahoots.
Totally.
You
Like
guys are-
I don't want to see the church get more partisan either, but there is a great example of a pastor who realizes one of the people I'm caring for is facing a significant problem because of a broken policy. And as their shepherd, I want to learn about it. I want to engage it. I want to speak out. I want to use whatever platform or authority I have to help the people under my care in a broken system. That's being political.
Yeah.
And amen that he did that.
Yeah, when
What
I
a
read that,
wonderful
I
example.
was that's what you're encouraging the church to do, I'm assuming.
Yes,
When you go
yeah.
and
But
speak.
but okay, so the church is supposed to be kind to immigrants. But
I think-
America,
Well, I think, certainly there's a need for policy reform. But I just think regardless of changing laws and policies of the land, the church's response to be the neighbor never changes.
the church's response
Right.
to the neighbor never changes. No. We're supposed to love the neighbor individually,
Interpersonally.
but not
right.
as a community.
But how can you love someone as a person, as a holistic person, and see that immigrant brother struggling because their undocumented status is putting them in the shadows, not allowing them to work. And actually, undocumented immigrants are disproportionately represented among victims of human trafficking. So you see these issues, but we don't speak out against these systemic structural issues that are putting them in that place.
Right.
And we say that we love them.
Individually.
I don't know if...
That doesn't, you don't buy that? Not sure that's
Well,
biblical.
it's the story of the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan didn't come by and check the guy's papers before he helped him.
Yeah.
He saw someone who needed
But
help.
he was an individual. A good Christian. He wasn't trying to change the law of the land to be kind to Samaritans. He was just being kind to Samaritans.
Yeah, this opens a bigger can of worms.
Ah.
But we do live in a democratic republic in which those of us who are citizens, we the people, as the Constitution says, have the authority to influence law.
Do you think it's odd for me to say, me as a Christian, I should help the immigrant, but I'm voting against my nation helping the immigrant?
I do think that is odd.
Okay.
I think it'd be like
But
saying...
I think we do bifurcate that issue.
Yeah, we do.
But,
I think we
but we don't do it
absolutely
consistently because an awful lot of conservative evangelical Christians, if they meet a single mom, a single woman who's pregnant, who's considering an abortion, will think I should show compassion and help
I
that.
should help her.
And they would also say, but I also want to see laws changed and policy changed around this issue of abortion. They don't separate that as a systemic versus individual case.
Okay.
And historically, when it came to things like abolition of slavery or child labor or prison reform, conservative Christians have been on the forefront both of showing compassion to individuals and seeking policy
why
changes.
have we lost our head all of a sudden?
Well, that's a
because
whole
our
different
politics,
story.
the partisanship has separated those issues.
Because you can't really say that was when conservative Christians were interested in that, because that was really before we had liberal Christians.
Well, no, I'm talking about theologically conservative.
which almost all Christians were.
Well,
It hadn't really.
But even in the early 20th century, there were liberal forms of Christian. All I'm saying is there
You
was
have to excuse them while they debate the history.
there wasn't this bifurcation of caring for the individual and ignoring unjust policies.
Yeah, okay.
But we've separated those things now.
Okay, last question for Liz that I have. They may have others, but so why wouldn't it be, what do you think about the idea of just taking all of the dreamers, putting them outside the country, and then letting the good ones come back in? Because I think you would have a pretty good case that you're one of the good ones.
And how do you define the good ones?
Those that can make America richer.
Great again.
Great again.
Richer.
That's the good thing.
Isn't it economics? Like, you're productive, you have a job, and you speak English. So therefore,
You're a good one.
you're good for us. Don't we just want to let people in that are good for us?
Isn't she already good for us? And
Yeah,
as
she
all
is.
the other ones, because she's paying her taxes.
Yeah.
She's not sucking from the system.
But here's the thing. If we're looking at Liz today. What if we were to rewind the tape to when you first came?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you-
then
and
she
you-
was,
and
she
you
was
were-
a big,
How would it have turned out?
You were a
Yeah.
big question
You
mark.
were 10
when
years
were-
old. You didn't speak English.
Yeah.
And it is a big question. I mean, most 10-year-olds, whether they can speak English or not, are not highly productive.
So do we believe that idea is logistically
I think
flawed
it's ridiculous
or morally
because
flawed?
it's morally
or
flawed and
it's biblically-
biblically
yeah.
flawed?
and it doesn't see the potential. And even if there isn't potential,
Yeah.
for whatever reason,
We don't help people that don't have potential. That's not.
Let me
That's
ask
not who
you.
we are.
I
It's
have
not
another
American.
question, Liz.
Okay.
What do you think the solution would be?
Right.
If they gave Liz the power
Ooh.
to solve this
Give
problem,
Liz the power.
what would you do?
Queen Elizabeth.
I'll just.
No, it's just Liz.
Queen Liz, sorry, yes, Queen Liz.
I will respond really quickly to Phil's question about. Well, I strongly believe that there is a really robust economic case to be made about keeping Dreamers here. This issue cannot be reduced to economics,
Amen.
and especially coming from people, us and people of faith, made in image of God with
Yeah.
just all of the dignity and God-given potential that we have. Well, one is just you can't. Everyone is everyone is the same in the eyes of God. But that is, even from the economics perspective, a vast majority. I think there was a survey done out of the 3,000 Dreamer that they polled, 90% had been active in the labor force.
Yeah.
If not, then many pursuing higher education. So that's kind of the economic argument. But I think for many Dreamers, they come at age 2, 1, or even as an infant. They don't remember their home country or their country of birth. To them, this is home. America is all they know. They don't know the language of their parents. They don't know the system, the culture. They are American in every way except for on paper.
Yeah.
So if I had a way, I guess, of reforming the system, I think there are bills that are being put forth in Congress as a bipartisan effort that while not perfect, I think they do a good job of serving to protect Dreamers. Now, I don't think we should stop short of that. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. If we don't address this issue, it only becomes more. But I think giving us an earned pathway towards long-term legal status. We don't want to jump the line. We don't believe that we should be jumping the line of those who are waiting legally. But providing us a way so that we can continue to be productive, to work, to pay taxes, to contribute to our community, our churches. I know of Dreamer pastors that are in leading parachurch ministries, also serving in that capacity. But allowing us to use our God-given potential to give back, but then at the same time be on this pathway towards long-term legal status and potentially eventual citizenship. And so I think that's how I would have it. And actually the DREAM Act that came out of both the Senate and the House this July, is kind of putting making these first steps towards a long-term solution.
Yeah. Okay. How do people learn more? Where do you blog? Can they follow you? Can they learn more about what you're doing?
Yes, they can find more resources at Evangelical Immigration Table's website, which is evangelicalimmigrationtable.com.
Okay.
They can, well, I don't tweet very regularly, but they can also follow me if they like. My Twitter handle is my name spelled backwards, Nodzil, Gnodzil. My youth pastor.
Gnodzil.
I don't know. I just,
like that.
Liz Dawn was taken.
Yeah.
And then various, combinations of Liz Dawn was taken. So like, all right, let's just go backwards.
That's clever.
My youth pastor, when he first saw it, thought I was trying to spell Godzilla,
Yeah.
but misspelled.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, thank you for being on the show. I got to wrap this up with a little song about Liz. Aren't you glad we got to know Liz Dong? Oh, I'm so glad she came along, and now I'll sing a little song about my new friend. Her name is Liz Dong, and I'd love to ask you why we can't be a little more loving towards the immigrants, because Liz, she's a dreamer. Ooh, she's not an economic schemer. Ooh, and I really think she should be allowed to stay because she came on my podcast just today. And if there's anything we can do for her, I hope you'll help out and learn more about her. Oh, sorry. That's all I got. That's all I got. Anyway.
I really liked it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Boy, is she being gracious.
Gnodzil. What rhymes with Gnodzil? That's what I really wanted to figure out. Gnodzil.
Nostril?
Near miss.
It's a loose.
Here's Phil.
Okay, what do we want to tell you about? Your book is still out, and you have a new book out. Is the new book out?
Today, October 3rd.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Well, that's the day they're going to be listening to this.
Yes, today,
Okay.
tomorrow.
My new
October
book,
3rd.
Immeasurable. I don't have my bell up.
Immeasurable.
Immeasurable. Reflections on the Soul of Ministry in the Age of Church Inc.
Oh, okay. I thought it was reflections on your own moral and spiritual character.
Immeasurable?
Yeah.
It's out by Moody Press. It's a collection of essays on ministry and church and the weird world we're in right now in that whole area. So it's largely for church leaders and pastors, but anybody who's kind of struggled with the way church operates. It's your kind of book. And I have one other thing to announce. I'm going to experiment this week with Facebook Live.
What?
I saw you'd already kind of tried that out.
So I asked people last week to give me questions, and I think we're going to do Facebook Live. If you want to tune in live, it'll be Wednesday at 2 o'clock Central Time.
Okay.
On my website, on Facebook, my Facebook page. And I think the topic we've narrowed down to is why should Christians be engaged in politics?
Oh.
So I will present on that.
This
If you cannot join live for that and like ask me your questions and engage in that, it will eventually be posted on my Facebook page so you can watch it afterwards. But
Now you
this
have a
is
live example you can use.
Exactly. Perfect timing.
Wow.
So 2 o'clock Central Time Wednesday, if you are around, check out my Facebook page. We'll talk about that issue.
Awesome. And you can go to faithblocks.com, BLOX, and check out my new stuff for kids.
And you can
you're doing fine?
you can hire me to do any of your voiceover needs. NeighborLadyVO.com.
Fantastic. We will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
The Phil Fisher Podcast is produced by Phil Fisher Enterprises and recorded live at Jellyfish Lab Studios. This episode was edited by Jason Rugg and was fact-checked by absolutely no one. For more information, go to philfisher.com.